Dan Perry here, and this is part 15 of our TCP/IP Basics training, Building a Table of Networks. In this video, what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and see how we can just build our tables of networks so that we can use those for implementing our network design. We need to know for the building purposes what the size of our subnet is, how many bits are being borrowed, and then we build a table showing the addresses for each of those networks. Now, for example, we're going to use a Class C network of 192.168.1.0. We're going to borrow 3 bits. Since nothing changes in the first 3 octets, we're not going to write those down for our table. Just remember those first 3 octets are the 192.168.1, and the subnet mask portion for the first 3 octets are 255, 255, 255. And just for purposes of this example, that makes it easier to work with. Now, first thing we need to do is our calculations. We already said we're borrowing 3 bits. That leaves 5 bits for the host portion. Well, calculating the total number of networks, that's 2 raised to the 3rd power, giving us 8 networks. Hosts, it's 2 to the 5th power, or 32 hosts per network. So we've got the number of hosts, the number of networks. Now our subnet mask, because the first 3 bits of that last octet become part of the network, we have a 11100000 for our subnet mask, and when we convert that to decimal, that's a 1 in the 128-bit position, a 1 in the 64, and a 1 in the 32. Add those together to give us a subnet mask of 224. Our full subnet mask would be 255, 255, 255, 224. So what do we know? We know there are 8 networks, 32 IP addresses per network. The 4th octet always starts with 0. So we're going to build a table in which we have the network number, the network address, the broadcast address, the first and last usable IP address in each network. So since we've got 8 networks, we'll number them starting at 0, 0 to 7, and we've got our column headings for our network number, address, broadcast address, first and last IP address. The way I go about this is I start by filling out the network addresses. Since the first network starts at 0, there are 32 IP addresses for each network. You simply add 32 to the previous network number to get the next one. So starting at 0, add 32 to give us network 32, then 64, 96, and so on. And our last network is 224. Now, the broadcast address is the last IP address in the range. So several ways of doing this. Basically, if you look, it is 1 less than the next network number. That's with the exception of the last network, and there it will be 255. So since network 1 starts at 32, the broadcast address for network 0 would be 31. Network 2 starts at 64, so the broadcast address for network 1 would be 63, and so on. In order to get our first and last IP addresses, we look at our network and broadcast addresses. The first usable IP address is always 1 more than the network address. The last usable IP address is always 1 less than the broadcast address. So for network 0, since the network address is 0, the first IP address would be 1, and the broadcast address is 31, so the last would be 30. For network 1, since we've got 32 and 63, the first IP address would be 33, the last would be 62, and so on. And here's our completed table. We can see that as we look through it, we had our Network addresses starting at 0, increasing by 32 each time. Our broadcast addresses started at 31, which is one less than network 1, and that actually increases also by 32 each time. Our first IP address is always one more than our network address, and our last IP address is one less than the broadcast address for that network. Now, you can use a spreadsheet to do this table, such as OpenOffice Calc, Numbers, Excel. That will make it very quick. Use the formulas in the spreadsheet to make your subnetting even easier. But do know how to do that subnetting by hand for your certification exams. Next time we'll look at some more examples of subnetting.